Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to go through a little bit about DCT on the Honda, specifically on the NC750X here, just to go through a little bit about basically how it works, how you might operate it, and the pros and cons compared to the manual gearbox. Maybe that's something you've been considering. Hopefully this video will help you out. Let's take a look. Okay, so when Honda brought out the NC700 and then obviously followed out with the NC750, they've offered it with both a manual traditional gearbox and also the DCT. So in other words, no clutch lever and no gear lever down there either. The bike does all the changing for you, even though under the skin it is a manual gearbox. It's just that it's automated, robotised if you like. So let's have a run round, show you the bits and bobs, where bits and bobs are, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into it. Okay, so the first obvious clue is there's no clutch lever. That tends to give it away, doesn't it, rather? And obviously if you come down here, there's no gear lever either. Now, there's two parts, or two main parts, if you like, that operate the DCT, the gearbox itself. Now, buried under here somewhere, I'm not going to be too specific because last time I did that I was pointing completely the wrong part of the engine, but broadly speaking, under here somewhere, there is a motor, and the motor drives, effectively is your left foot, and the motor drives the gearbox up and down through the gears as commanded by the ECU. And if we spin around the other side, now this is the bit that is a giveaway as well if you haven't seen it before. Obviously it's written in here, dual clutch transmission. So under here is the another oil filter, because on this side of the bike you've actually got the electronics and the hydraulics that operate the clutches. So bits and bobs on this side are the clutches that disengage and re-engage the gears, and on the other side is the motor that actually shuffles the cogs around. Now this is a little bit wider. These bikes, or the NC, weighs about 10 kilos heavier than the manual bike, so if weight is absolutely critical to you, then that's something maybe to bear in mind. So let's have a look at the dash. Okay, actually makes more sense if we go through the controls rather than the dash first, I think. So it's all on the right hand handlebar, for those who haven't seen it before. You've got this fancy switch here which can go that way, and that will put the bike into neutral, which is where it would normally start up from. And on this side you can see an S and a D. So this is for changing between the different modes of automatic, and the S will come up as sport and D is for drive. Now in the early models it had sport and drive, and those were the only two modes. Later models like this, or the middling models like this, had had drive, and then sports 1, 2 and 3. And the only difference between all of these, it doesn't make any more power or make any more power at different points in the rev range. All it does is change how can I put it? It changes where the gearbox changes up. So in drive, which is the most lazy mode if you like, or the slowest mode, or the most economical mode, you'll find it will change up very early, to the point of being almost too early, and a lot of people say it actually lugs the engine, it's not worth it. So we use it in sport mode, if it's one of the older bikes, or in this one, which is an 18, it's sport 1, 2 and 3. And in sport 3 it will hold on to the gears as long as humanly possible. Too much for my taking. I tend to leave mine in sport 1. In the later models, I think it's the 21s later, you've obviously got the TFT dash, and all the settings are completely different, but the same theories apply. You've still got the different types of sport mode. Now over the back here, if you can see, here's a little switch, and this is easy to catch with your finger, and don't ask me how I know this. What this does, it changes it from automatic to manual, so you can flick it into that, and all of a sudden it won't change up a gear automatically unless you hit the rev limiter or it's about to stall, and it will ask you to basically command it to change gear yourself. It will let you decide when to change gears within those limitations. Now how does it do that? Well, if we go to the other handlebar, you can see under here, buried under here somewhere, is a minus button, and around the other side, I'll just flip around, and on the other side, as you can see, there's a very filthy plus button for going up a gear. One thing I haven't mentioned, and you don't often see it mentioned, what you can buy if you don't want to go up and down the gears on those sort of flick switches, you can actually buy a lever kit which looks like an ordinary manual gear lever, but it wires up to the electronics of the DCT, and it allows you to change gear using the manual override, but using a gear lever, so you get the same sort of feel as an ordinary manual bike, which is quite an interesting play on the whole system, I think. Some people prefer that bit more tactile feeling. Apologies, this is a bit scrappy today. I'm fighting the weather desperately at the moment. Right, so let's look at the dash. I'm trying to get it as clear as I can for you. Now, okay, so if I stand up, if I start the bike up, hopefully you can still hear me over it. Now, initially you saw a little minus sign come up just to the right of the 0 miles per hour, the speedo, and that's where we're going to see what it's doing as far as the gears go, etc, etc. So if I come onto this switch here, I'm just going to flick it like that, and that will put it into drive mode. So if I do that, here it go clunk, gears go into first gear, and you can see there's the little D, that sort of flag symbol here, that shows we're in drive mode. If I flick that switch again to the left, it goes from D into Sport 1. Now that's Sport 1, you've just got one of the little chevrons. If I push the switch to the left again and hold it, it goes up to Sport 2, press it to the left and hold it again, and it goes up to Sport 3. If I press and hold again to the left, it goes back to Sport 1, and if I press it briefly to the left, it goes back to drive. Also, that little AM switch, if I just flick that for a moment, you can see that that disappears entirely. I've now got complete control over the gears unless it hits the red line, or if it's going to stall, in which case the DCT does take over. Okay, that's shown you a very quick look at the switchgear and at the dash, so you can kind of get a feel for what it looks like. What's it like to ride? Very easy going. The different modes, as I say, will change up at different speeds. So if you're in a very laid back kind of mood, then drive mode will give you a very laid back, very economical ride, although it can make the engine labour a bit. So either the sport mode, or if you're on the 18 models like this one, then the Sport 1 mode gives a smoother ride, I think it's fair to say. Has got some tricks up its sleeve. If you're coming down a steep hill and you touch the brake, it will change down another gear. It will try and give you a bit of additional engine braking. Very clever. A little thing which no one seems to mention, but it's quite a neat trick and helps with the brakes. As we all know, or anyone's looking at NC knows, the brakes aren't great. So, pros and cons. I don't think one is better than the other. I don't think the manual is better than the DCT or vice versa. I think what you find with these is that they suit different people. So if you want an easygoing, laid back, you know, no worries kind of drive, then the DCT works very well as a commuter, works very well if you've come from scooters. I was looking at an SH300 as a possibility, and then realised that these weren't a huge amount more than the SH300, well, as a percentage, but for the amount of extra bike you get, I thought this was a better deal than, say, a T-Max or something like that. Automatic box, I thought they were similar in that regard. The manuals, I feel, are better if you want a more involved ride. Yes, you can put the lever on down there, which gives you a bit more of a feel of a manual bike, but I still prefer the involvement and also the controllability. Not having the clutch there does take away some of that feeling of control of the bike at very slow speeds when you're manoeuvring, and not having the clutch there to be able to finesse that last little bit of control, I do feel is a disadvantage in very slow moving traffic, say when you're filtering or something. Have to balance it on the back brake. So overall, I don't think one is better than the other. I do recommend you take a long test ride on one of these, preferably actually 2 goes at it. I would suggest perhaps 2 goes, because the first time you go out, it all feels very strange, and it's very easy to go, I don't think this is for me at all. That's what I felt first time. The second time I went out for about half an hour or an hour, and it does start to make sense then. You can start to actually, oh, actually this would work quite well for me personally. So that's my thoughts on it. If there's anything I've missed, and it's a very quick one today, I'm afraid, because I'm standing in the rain trying to dodge the raindrops, pop the questions in the comments below in the usual way. I'll come back to you, as I say, with anything that I haven't covered, or any questions that are still outstanding, and let me know what you think. Till next time, guys, thanks a lot. Cheers, bye-bye.